So, thriving in today's fast-paced world of change and disruption requires innovation. Inside Outside Innovation is the podcast that explores the ins and outs of innovation with raw stories, real insights, and practical advice from the best and brightest in the world of startups and innovation. Each week, we'll bring you the latest ideas in lean startup, design thinking, corporate venture capital, and more. Now, let's get started.
All right, Brian, we're back at it today.
Man, you always like these intros, don't you?
I like kicking things off well. I like starting strong. And today we're starting strong with an interview that I did when I was at the Economist Innovation Forum up in Chicago a while back. And specifically, I got the opportunity to speak with Celeste Henkelmann, who was in attendance. Celeste is the strategic marketing manager for Konica Minolta. You may remember Konica Minolta specifically with the cameras and printers and lasers. There's so much more than that nowadays. Still a 40,000 employee company based originally out of Japan, but in about 50 countries now. And specifically, Celeste runs the marketing for the Business Innovation Center, or the BIC, which you'll hear her talk quite a bit about. And in our interview, we got into a lot about how they even got started. And so especially if you're someone who's listening and you're thinking about starting your own innovation lab or innovation hub, this is exactly the episode for you.
Yeah, I liked a lot about this interview that you'll hear in a couple of minutes. The thing that stood out for me is obviously take a listen to how Konica Minolta is actually reaching out to startups and how they're actually building a community around that to help favor and move their innovation forward.
Yep, and if you're one of those startups, she actually gives you a tip at the end. If you want to go pitch Konica Minolta, make sure you listen to her advice there. So let's get into it. So take me back to the beginning of the Business Innovation Center. What did it look like from the very start?
It looked like a big empty box. So our vice president, Eka Zahasi, basically was given keys to a building in Silicon Valley and told to build out an innovation center. And she has an extensive history in building innovation within companies, including PayPal and eBay. So she got right to work. Our first year of existence was primarily built on building the strategy for the market. So that's a lot of understanding the trends, talking to customers, and figuring out how we can align our core business with what's needed in the industry, not only today, but where we see it going in the next, 20 years. And so, we're kind of in our second year of existence, and we're executing on what we did the first year. So we have several investments. We're building out partnerships. We're working with universities, startups, other corporations.
Very cool. So one of the things that our listeners are always interested in, since many of them are startups or corporate innovators looking to learn from startups, is that exact thing that you mentioned, which is partnering with startups or investments. Tell me a little bit more about what Konica Minolta is doing today with startups.
So right now we are doing several different things. So we've invested in several startups. We primarily invest at this point in seed to Series A. We're looking for startups with very solid IP that are going to grow with us. So some of our startups that we've invested in are in the robotics space. We also have healthcare investments, office automation. So we basically invest in companies that we are going to grow, and we provide them with global access, customer access, ability to scale, financing. We're here for the long haul with them.
So when Konica Minolta is looking to innovate, you have that time-old question of, do we do it inside ourselves, or do we go out and do we partner with one of these startups or invest in them? Can you walk me through a little bit about the decision-making process, or how you decide when to take it on internally and when you look externally?
It's a very interesting question. So As I mentioned, we have 5 global BICs, and each of those are run kind of independently. And what's interesting is if you ask that question to different BICs, you get completely different answers. So I don't think it's necessarily a Konica Minolta perspective as much as it is a BIC North American. Here, we lean typically towards build is better than buy. We see that as contributing to agility, ability to be nimble, and also going in where we already have proof of concept. We are investing, with people who already have traction in the market, and we will of course further that with our own pilots. Singapore is one of our other BICs, and they build a lot of it in-house. So it's definitely dependent on the geography and the kind of direction that each BIC is setting for itself.
If an organization is thinking about starting something like a BIC or an innovation lab or a hub or whatever you want to call it, what are some of the lessons learned that you've had, either in starting it in these first 2 years or in partnership with startups? Any advice that you would give to them to help them get off on the right foot?
So I think there's kind of 2 approaches to this. One is understanding how to connect externally with startups, and the other is understanding how to bring your culture to innovation. One of the things we believe is you can't create a sustainable change unless you create the culture that will allow it to grow. So I think what we've seen internally is a lot of education is needed. As I mentioned, we are a really traditional company. A lot of our team across the globe isn't familiar with robotics, isn't familiar with IoT. So we've implemented several programs that provide kind of training for them, whether that's through podcasts or webinars. We hold innovation contests. So I think one of the key lessons is it starts internally. In terms of connecting with startups, I think one of the biggest things for us in Silicon Valley is getting on the ground, getting your name out there. So that's everything from utilizing the personal connections of our team to partnering with accelerators, hosting events. We really especially at Konica Minolta, we really have to get our name out there in a way that's synonymous with innovation and not our traditional core products.
Now, Celeste, you hit upon it a little bit about the talent of the teams of the startups. You talked about it before, about how you need to continue to have a more culture focused of innovation across the board. Have you seen any particular characteristics or talents or things that help you understand if somebody's going to be a great fit within the BIC or going to be a great fit among an innovative product team or an innovative startup?
Well, I think for the BIC, especially, we are at the intersection of kind of corporate and startup. So I think it's really finding someone who loves the challenge to bridge the gap. It's someone who really gets excited to, teach people what they know, but it's somebody who's really passionate about what it means to be innovative, someone who's forward thinking. I always like to say I'd love to work with quirky and weird people. I send out, or several people on our teams often send out fun memes with our emails. So it's just, it's basically someone you want to be around, someone who's pleasant and someone knows the industry and wakes up every day asking, what can I do to further that?
So what are some of the things that you're thinking about over the next 12 months to continue to help us all think when we see Konica Minolta means innovation?
Well, so we have some really exciting product launches coming up. I can't talk about them yet, but we have 5 verticals. So we focus in robotics, healthcare, IoT, enterprise, and office of the future. And several of those we'll be doing go-to-market testing with and releasing products within each of them. So I think, at this stage, the way we're getting our name out there is by getting proof out there. We're getting our products in front of customers.
Now, do you have any of these projects that you can talk about and give us a sneak peek on? I thought I saw some tweets about some serving robot or something there. Can you give us a peek behind the magic curtain?
So there's kind of 2 things we're doing. One is our own investments, our own launches and pilots. The other is our partnerships. So with Savioke, Savioke is this really awesome hospitality robot, which basically delivers commodities that you would need as a hotel guest right to your room. So that's one of our partnerships. So before we launch anything internally, we work with them. So it's a pilot right now. So far, it's been going very well, I would say. We've actually helped them install robots at a couple hotels by using our existing service department.
So if I'm a startup and I want to approach Konica Minolta because I've got an amazing idea in Internet of Things, robotics. What are some of the things that you're going to look for to decide if I'm a good partner or if I'm even worth looking at?
Well, I think, we are interested in a startup that's going to, or a product that is going to grow. So one of the key things we look for is a strong IP. We want to make sure that if we invest in you, we're going to be able to stay competitive. Beyond that, we want, a solid team to help grow. I think that's pretty much what any venture capitalist is going to echo. But being able to show not only that you have the product, but the internal capabilities to see it through is really important to us. And finally, as a strategic investor, we do want to see that it aligns with our strategy moving forward, something that we'd be able to support via our existing customer base, our existing infrastructure. And that's, not directly aligned necessarily with printers, but with the expertise that we've built from existing in that industry.
So I really enjoyed that opportunity to talk to Celeste. One of the things that I think came out really important to me was as how do they think through specifically, should they build or should they partner or should they buy? And what you hear is they're doing a lot of different things. They know the areas that they want to invest in. And something that wasn't specifically in the clips that she said is they specifically looked at some of their core competencies they had. Apparently, for instance, working on printers and copiers like their past translates pretty well into working on robots as well. So understanding that they might have a natural affinity towards that allowed them to start to say, cool, what are some of the other opportunities out there in robotics?
Yeah. I think the other thing that was interesting to me was, again, talking about how do you actually engage with startups and how do you actually get involved in startup communities? How do you get connected? They're an old school brand, with old school types of products. How do you engage with startups and position yourself as an innovative brand? And again, doing things like, not only investing in startups, but, having a variety of different activities.
Events, partnering with accelerators,
Exactly.
all of those sorts of things. Yeah, they're really trying to get themselves out there. And so I think that's a good lesson, too, because I think a lot of corporations think we're amazing. We've got all these clients. We've got all this money. Startups are just going to beat a path to our door. But corporations do have to get out there, too, especially when you're in a competitive area like Silicon Valley.
Exactly. Well, that's it for another episode of Inside Outside Innovation. Thanks for coming out. Thanks for tuning in. Reach out and let us know what you're thinking. Give us your feedback. You can reach us on Twitter at the IO Podcast. And if you have 30 seconds to spare, please, we'd love to hear from you on iTunes as well. Go over there, review us, give us an opportunity to earn your trust and business, and we'll talk to you later. Till next time, go out and innovate.